Yes, this is the Mark Haney Show on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown we love. And today, got a great show with Jennifer Edwards. She has written a book called Bridging the Gap. And you know, if you think about it, what we think about gets our attention, right? What's on our mind ends up being the way that we act. And we're going to talk about today a little bit about bridging the gap in our communication. So if we probably need to spend a little bit more time as leaders, as entrepreneurs, thinking about the way that we communicate, the way that we listen. And in today's show, you're gonna hear a little bit of Jennifer's thoughts, some of my thoughts, and I hope you like it. I think you're gonna pick up on some good tips. And at the end of the show, I'll share a little bit about what's going on with the Growth Factory. So stick around, my friends. I am fired up. I am with somebody else who is equally, if not more fired up. I am with Jennifer Edwards. She has written the book, Bridge the Gap, and we're going to be talking about bridging the gap. And before the show, she was talking about you got to make the ask, which is interesting because in the book, throughout the book, it does speak to the idea of being a better communicator. I mean, that's kind of the premise of the book, is communicating so that we build better relationships, but asking the right questions. And so many times we're even afraid to ask anything.
We sure are. I don't think you are.
Sometimes I am.
Okay, but yeah, so glad to be here. And I hope we have this conversation because, hey, it's a new economy. It's a new world. It's a new paradigm. And as we're settling and going back to work, finding this new sense of normal in our lives, there are going to be a lot of things we need to make an ask for.
Yeah.
So how do we get the language, the energy, the curiosity right to make the ask? And to really build great workplaces and meaningful businesses.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the why being a good communicator is important and the importance of being somebody who asks good questions and listens well. Why is that so important? What are the different areas, just so we can put our audience sort of in the right, set the tone for the conversation?
So here's a really base premise. How you show up matters. You know that. All the leaders you look for, what do you really look for? You look for how they show up. Mm-hmm. And when you think about how people show up, Mark, what are the characteristics that you see in intuitively, but also strategically grounded leaders that they do? Just tell me.
Yeah. So some of the things that I look for in the way people show up is, do they show up ready to play, ready to engage?
Yeah.
Are they forward-leaning by nature? Because if they're not, someone who's not forward-leaning might stroll in a little late to a meeting, potentially. Might even put you off on a meeting. It might be someone who has their cell phone out.
Yep.
It might be somebody who is talking around the agenda instead of speaking to the agenda. But really, you can tell they're distracted.
You can. You know what they're usually distracted by? They're not listeners. They're listening instead to the agenda in their own mind, to the noise outside, to fear, to hesitation, to shame, whatever it might be. But in the end, what you're actually talking to, people who show up are so present, so able to be in the moment that they're able to hear beyond words. They're able to hear energy. They're able to hear the circumstances. They're able to hear who is in front of them so that they can, might I say, morph themselves into the right person to show up for the conversation they're in.
Some people have, what I see often is in the way that people carry on a conversation is what I call competitive listening. So they show up and they have, their agenda is to get some words out, right? And so they are just sort of like waiting, almost like a child waiting to jump to a jump rope, right? I've got my hands out there. Yeah. We're just waiting to time it so I can get in the middle and start jumping so I don't trip over the jump rope. I'm waiting to get my words out. And so waiting for you to say the trigger word that gives me the chance to blah. Instead of listening in a way that complements the overall conversation.
Yeah, and you're a master at this because what you do is you listen to an idea and you add to it. You don't compete with it. And I think it's actually a skill. It's a learned skill that when we show up, we need to understand that listening starts way before words leave our mouth. It starts as a decision that you're going to show up to and I love to say this, learn something you didn't know you didn't even know. Great leaders, great listeners show up in any situation and say, I don't need to be a know-it-all. I don't need to lead with ego. I don't have to say, oh, yeah, me too. Instead, what they show up and say is, I'm around somebody who's smart. I love to be contributed to and to contribute into. And I want to show up and say, hey, how can I be contributed into by learning about the other?
When they begin talking about themselves or kind of speaking in the way that we've kind of referenced here, I think that sometimes that comes from fear, where they have to get their words out, or they want to make sure their point of view, regardless of what your point of view is. I think that might come from some kind of insecurity. What do you think?
Identity.
Oh.
Insecurity. Same word.
Okay.
Look, I like to think to myself, you and I are major sports nuts. Mm-hmm. Business is a game. It's a game we humans have constructed to make meaning of ourselves, to create meaning and great, things out in the world. But in the end, it's actually a game for identity. It's a game for how do we contribute? What are we doing? Why do we matter? And so in the end, I noticed that the best leaders, the leaders that we want to invest in, for example, at our fund, the leaders you want to invest in, they're people who show up wanting to play in a game for identity of contribute, work hard, play fair, lean forward, fight for the right thing, but most of all, be a contributor to the community and make a difference.
Yeah, I think maybe that just goes back, millions of years as tribes began to form, as we all want. We know we're stronger together kind of innately. That's how humans have evolved. But some people have developed leadership skills and tribe building, team building, much better than others. Why did you write the book? Why did your words have to come out in the book?
That's a good question. No one's asked me that why words had to come out. So this book was started 2.5 years ago. Little did we know there would be a pandemic and all the fractionalization that's just like unwoven over the last 2.5 years. And this book was actually written because deep down inside, I'm so committed to curiosity that it keeps me up at night. It makes me constantly think to myself, what don't I know that I don't know that could help me see things completely differently and make something better, improve something, get to know somebody better? So inside of me, just like I am driven at a pro level to be curious. So this book had to come out because I truly, deeply believe that curiosity is a curing, healing skill. It is the antidote to polarization.
Okay.
Because if I can understand who you are and why you believe what you believe, I really can't deny you your dignity.
Yeah. And we're seeing this polarization in every walk of life, it seems like.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And I also wrote this book because this is kind of a crazy idea, but I think to myself, work is actually a place where we get to live in this democracy.
Okay.
You don't get to choose who you go to work with often. You and I do because we're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But a lot of workers and everyday professionals go to work and they don't choose who they're with. They may not even be in a place where they have strong preferences of that they enjoy it, but they're in America. And if we're going to ever actually increase the quality of collaboration, decrease polarization, we're going to do it in the workplace by people getting curious to understand each other, learning new ways to collaborate, and hopefully go back and build a glue of respect and trust that's built on curiosity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it will help America if we can all work together.
Yeah.
I think it could help Sacramento if we can work together. And I think it helps any business if you can work together. One of the things that over the years of helping people build businesses and being the CEO of my own companies is that communicating the vision, having an organization with clarity throughout the organization where people were finishing each other's sentences, that kind of clarity in the organization, it was invaluable. I mean, it speeds things up so much in getting things done. And that's when chemistry begins to happen. When you're finishing my sentence and I'm finishing yours, and the ideas are flowing from not just the CEO, not just the leadership team, but the line workers. It could be anybody in the organization feeling, I guess, empowered to begin talking and listening with the other people in the organization. That's how innovation happens.
Yeah. And it's what you're creating in the growth factory, aren't you?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And we're excited about that. And then why don't we take a step here just to hit pause for a second as we talk about communication, and let's communicate, like, what do you do for a living, and how does that relate to the growth factory?
That's a great question. So I obviously am an author and speaker and spend a lot of time on the road doing that right now as we are promoting our new book. But at the core, what I'm really, really passionate about is helping people learn how to master communication so they can open up a conversation in any way. Because I actually believe life is actually about solution selling. That's what life is about. How do you have conversations everywhere where you can be a person who goes into any conversation and opens up possibilities that they may never have thought of for themselves?
Yeah. Well, you are also a venture capitalist. You're
Yep.
with Winning Streak Ventures, a local VC. Growth Factory is a startup accelerator with accompanying venture fund. And so in many ways, we're aligned. But
We are.
prior to the show, we were talking about a mutual friend of ours that is growing a startup right here. And so we, in many cases, have the opportunity to work with the same people and work together, which is really a cool thing. And that collaboration, it didn't happen by accident. And that collaboration, I believe it can transform Sacramento, not just you and me, but you and me and the other people in the startup ecosystem and in the leadership of Sacramento, working together, communicating together, collaborating. I mean, we can do anything if we can work together.
I'm a diehard for this completely. So we both grew up here. I'm 5 generations. I'm Arukala. Our family's been here in Rockland for generations, and we're all entrepreneurs. And, if you are someone who's watching this and interested in looking at this marketplace, you have a team and a group of people here who will fight for you, grow with you, invest in you. We are ripe. Sacramento is ripe for innovation, for great small businesses growing and scaling. Greg is a great example of somebody who dug in this area and is changing Sacramento. I just really am glad that we get to do these things.
Are you talking about Greg Conley?
Yeah, Greg Conley.
Greg Conley. He's Trifecta Nutrition. Yeah, what a success story. He built the largest organic meal delivery company along with his sister and a great team, and they've scaled and they're doing really well. And I think it's stories like Greg, stories of other entrepreneurs that's kind of what we do here on the show is this is a little bit of a how-to sort of segment for the show, how to communicate better, how to be a better leader, how to build teams. But we also like to share stories of inspiration. So when we think about Greg and his sister Liz of building Trifecta, these are the types of things that make you think, well, maybe I can do it too. And that's happening all around us. And you and I are lucky enough to be a part of it.
We are. And some of the firms we're investing in right now out of our fund are just like that. Excited young entrepreneurs with huge visions and committed to their visions through thick and thin, storm and sun. And it's those types of players we look for. And I'm sitting here probably in the end because of my aunt, Sal Edwards. You interviewed her the other day.
Yes.
She started Fleet Feet, just an entrepreneur with a passion for getting America fit one person at a time. And I'll tell you, she kicked my butt so hard to get this book written that, that I owe her a debt of gratitude. But this is a place, Sacramento is a place where you're not alone and you're big around that. I mean, I think that for everybody who's listening, you're not alone here and you shouldn't be alone because great things don't happen in isolation.
Right. Nobody builds a truly great company alone, and it's certainly true as a startup because you think about that. So we kind of led off the show with asking questions, and so you're a startup out there, and you are feeling a little bit alone, and maybe even afraid to ask, where do I turn? What kinds of things? And you also said we're always selling. So I'm paraphrasing, but we solution selling is what the most successful people in life end up doing a good job on solution selling.
Right.
So somebody who needs some help with their startup, how do you, any thoughts for them?
Yeah. Number one, make sure you have a great support team. So when you're in startup and you're the founder, it can be exhausting and you always feel like you have to be on, right? You're always on, you're always promoting. So number one is your brain, and you can read a lot about this in the book, but your brain's going to get exhausted if you're constantly on. So find a few people who are safe to not be on, to vent, to let out the frustration. So number one.
Who's that for you?
That for me, I have a team of 3 people.
Okay.
Yeah. Casey, my husband, and Jill. I mean, like I let it ride and rip. Because don't you agree that there are times where you just can't perform anymore?
You can't. And it's amazing. You kind of have to get up to, this is your 3rd podcast of the day. You get up when you do a podcast. So you still have good energy after 3 podcasts. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
But it's true that we need our downtime as well. So have that good support system so that you can be, I guess, turn it down a notch. But then when it's time to build that team, and you're feeling alone, you're out there thinking about who you might get to attract as a co-founder or as an early employee, and you begin to think about, like, what do I need? What kind of things should I be asking them? Right? Any thoughts on that?
Yes. But before I go there, I want to add something, because you've done something really well that I think we need to just like call out. Number one is you need to be able to turn yourself off. Number 2 is great successful leaders that we look for care about their fitness, how they're taking care of themselves, because they realize that their potential is based on this human suit they're in and how well they take care of that human suit. So we're constantly looking for people who are fit, eating well, taking care of their body, understand that that brain is their asset and they need to feed it well. And then 3rd, the ask. Like, please, we want to see, we want to invest in, and I know you do as well, people who are like, I want to learn. I want to grow. I'm curious. I'm coachable. And so for these people, we encourage you, ask for what you need. Ask for what you don't know. Don't hesitate to go and say, hey, I'd love to hear what your perspective is. What have you learned so I don't have to have the trial and error? So ask. Swallow your ego. Swallow your pride, because those are just, ridiculous anyway. They're just protecting you. And show up and ask a great question that you don't know the answer to.
So you, in the book, there are different types of questions that you can ask that are helpful, and then there are some. One of the things you put in the book I thought was interesting was a fraudulent question.
Yeah.
Do you remember that part of the book?
Curiosity fraud, and the question.
Curiosity fraud. Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
We'd love that.
I was like, oh, what's curiosity fraud? It's like you're faking like you're curious.
All the time.
Yeah.
People do it all the time. They ask questions to which they already know the answer, so they can look smart. Or they ask questions they already know that they just want to get a zinger, a gotcha. I'm going to ask you a question and take you down and get you stuck down there and make you look stupid.
Interesting.
People do it all the time. But there is one word, I'll tell you, that is the antithesis of curiosity. So, so Stacy comes downstairs in the morning and you've already had your workout and you're on your 2nd cup of coffee. And she says to you, hey, Mark, why is there no coffee?
Put me on the defensive. I drank the last cup.
Yeah. So we've all been taught, especially in business, to ask the why. Ask the why. Well, I got to tell you, the brain hates to question why.
Interesting.
So get rid of it. There's a lot of tips in the book, but stop asking the word why.
What should she do? Let's correct her. This is a good chance to get her straightened around. My wife's Stacy, for any of you who don't know. I get up 0 dark 30, and so you're right on. I go to either yoga or CrossFit. I come back and I do drink coffee, which is probably not the healthiest thing to do, but it's part of the routine.
Yeah.
So she comes downstairs and she's like, "Why is there no coffee?" What should she say?
Well, there's not a perfect answer in that situation, but would be the best thing to say, hey, Mark, is there more coffee left? Or Mark, could you help support me getting some coffee? Or Mark, that. And it's still the same intent, but the why word literally takes you back to your childhood, your split, life or death, mom or dad, fight or flight. Language matters. You know this. How you motivate people, how you move people matters.
Yeah. It's interesting because we don't want to set people whether we go into a meeting or we're coming downstairs to ask the first question of the morning. We don't want to put people on defensive. It's better to let them get their guard down first. Is that right?
Absolutely. And let's remember, in all relationships, kindness wins. And I look for that in any executive, any founder, anyone we work with. Like, at their core, they can be gritty, but are they kind?
Interesting, because we both look for committed founders, right?
Yeah.
You brought up the word commitment. I think my number one core value in life is to put people who are committed in my world, because if you don't have commitment, you're probably not the person that I'm going to have a strong relationship with. And so commitment is number one. I also look for humility and authenticity. And part of that comes through kindness. Some of what I see in kindness it sort of crosses over into humility. And you can see this with the way that they treat other people.
Yeah.
So one of the things I look for, like if I'm out to dinner with somebody, I sort of look for the way they treat the waiter or waitress or the server or the hostess. Are they kind? I look for that, and that's very judgmental on my part, but I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to invest, how strong of a relationship I want to have with this person if they're somebody new in my life. But those kind of things can be kind of a direct turnoff when they're not.
Sure.
They're kind to me, but they're not kind to somebody they don't know.
Not
like general kindness.
You're not judgmental. You're evaluative.
Yeah.
I mean, we are the sum of whom we surround ourselves with. And so when you and I are selecting founders, I am looking for commitment and kindness. I'm also looking for coachability. Arrogance is a huge turnoff. Confidence isn't, though.
Okay, so that's good. I agree with you, but let's elaborate on that for
Okay.
the person that's out there thinking about raising money or getting a job or selling something. We're all solution selling. So coming in and you want the impression of the buyer, in your case the VC, and the startup. You want them to come across, in a perfect world, they're confident but not arrogant. How do you differentiate between those two?
Arrogance is I know it all. Confident is I'm curious to what I don't know, flat out. A confident person is someone who says, I'm passionate about this idea. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know, but I'm so ready to learn and lean on your wisdom for, or to help me go find the wisdom. Yeah. Arrogance, you smell it. You smell it. You've smelled it, haven't you?
Yeah, for 100%. When you bring up if it's a pitch, or it could be a sales pitch, or it could be a startup, and you bring up an idea that maybe demonstrates that I don't know as much as I should about the product or the concept. When somebody shoots down my idea hard without really thinking it through, because they don't really know my background, right? And so when they shoot it down hard without thinking it through, instead of trying to understand my idea better, that might be a demonstration of a touch of arrogance and a little less of that curiosity.
Yeah, you nailed it. And in the end, nobody does business alone. You said it. We know it's true. All great businesses are built with people by your side. So in the end, I am looking for people who want to lock arms, who want to run hard, who will have my back and mine theirs through it all. I mean, because that is just that tenacity. It's contagious, because then I know they're going to find those people and bring them on the team. And that's how acceleration happens.
Interesting. I like the word infectiousness. And some people exude charisma naturally. Yeah. Other people are very likable because of just how committed they are. If they're and there's different ways that people are sort of attracted to you. But definitely we are attracted to certain types of people more than others. And when I invest, I want to invest into people that can attract others, because as a CEO of a company, that's one of the most important pieces of your job, is being able to attract others.
It is your job.
Yeah.
It is your job. It's your job to attract the right people, empower them to do their role well, and get out of the way. Period. It
is. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So why there are some that you and I have invested into that have turned out phenomenally.
Yep.
Others are still learning, because we're all a work in progress. Just because you're not a great communicator you know, 5 years into your job as a CEO, doesn't mean you won't be a great communicator and a great leader at 10. If you have the desire to become a great leader, you can.
Absolutely.
And then there's certain stumbling blocks that sort of stop us from getting there. Maybe we could talk through to those people that are working on developing their leadership skills. What are some ideas that we want to put in our arsenal?
Number one, are you reading? Are you learning? Are you listening? I want to know that. One of my favorite questions to ask somebody is, what's the best thing you've read lately? What's the podcast you're listening to? It tells me a lot. Think about it. Like, if you ask some of these, the people that pitch to us, they're not ready for that question.
Well, what are you reading? Because I'll ask you this. So what, you're obviously coming on the Mark Haney show, so I know it's the Mark Haney show podcast. But so what are you reading?
The Coddling of America. Have you read it yet?
No, but it sounds very intriguing. You've got my attention.
Oh my goodness. My dad turned me on to it. Harry Edwards. And by the way, 50 years ago today, my dad wrote a book from McGraw-Hill. And now I'm writing one 50 years later.
50 years ago today?
Yeah, this week.
This week?
Can you believe it?
Okay, so I want to talk about Coddling of America. What was your dad's book?
My dad wrote books all about computer programming. He wrote the first basic Pascal, COBOL. Nice. Like, did I say that right? COBOL?
COBOL. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
Dad's a smart guy, huh?
Yeah, Dad's a smart guy. But The Coddling of America, I'm reading it. It's super fascinating. And The Power of Regret by Daniel Pink. The Power of Regret.
Power of Regret. Now, that's interesting. Those are two. Okay, so I look forward to hearing both of those two. Power of Regret almost sounds, because regret sounds unpowerful to me on the surface.
It does.
And then The Coddling of America, that speaks to my core.
You're going to love it.
And because I was with Pete Rose yesterday.
Yep.
Okay, he came and spoke to our entrepreneurial group. And so he's an old school. For those of you who don't know, he was a guy that was, he set, I think, more records than anybody else in baseball, made some mistakes, and now he's not a Hall of Famer, so he's very easy to admit that, but he did call it like he sees it in terms of coddling today's youth and coddling of much of society, not just our kids, but even adults are being coddled these days.
You and I even at times, and I'm committed to not.
I mean, that's kind of what political correctness tends to be, is coddling.
Yeah. Coddling, so this book has really made me think about parenting, about generational behavior changes. So I would encourage everybody to grab it, just to take a look. And then The Power of Regret is about how we're so afraid to look back in life and the regrets, but what strength there is in understanding them. Daniel Pink, he actually, one of the top selling author right now in the country, he endorsed our book. He was an early adopter, and so we thank him for that. But it's worth every bit of your time.
And so in the book, when you go back and reflect on your life, that seems healthy. Mm-hmm. If you can be productive with it, it can be really healthy. But what if you don't really find the regrets, because these are these mistakes that you may have made or things that you may have done differently? If you, in retrospect, a lot of times they end up just being good life lessons.
Yeah. In fact, there's a little formula. I love to think about this, and it fits in with regret, but not how Daniel Pink defines it. But it's E plus R equals O. An event plus a response equals an outcome. And can we E plus R equals O? So can we change the events that happen? No.
Okay.
But when you add in the response, you get very different outcomes based on who this and how this response happens. So, there are a lot of us from the pandemic had a response that repackaged, retooled their entire businesses and thrived.
Okay, true.
And had others who couldn't repackage and retool, even in the same industry. They were too headstrong, stubborn, unwilling to understand packaging changes or whatever it is.
Afraid to pivot.
Afraid to pivot. And so I constantly am looking, truthfully, another thing I'm looking for always in the people I surround myself with, both professionally and personally, is when events happen, what is their willingness to respond as if it's a teacher as opposed to a disaster? Mm-hmm. And because that means that all of them, even regrets, become outcomes that we can learn from.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that this is reminding me of for those listening now, this is a sort of an embarrassing moment for me. So it had never happened before in the last, I think I've been doing this show 8 years, and we've never had a technical foul up where the audio was indistinguishable. It was just like a complete technical failure. We had that about 30 days ago when Jennifer and I did this show. So we are actually redoing this show for the second time. And so I admit that to you because when we did the show, that comment reminded me of COVID hitting. And I remember during that show, we talked about like my response to COVID a little bit. Somehow you always get me to talk about myself, which is awkward. But we talked about my response to COVID and how I regretted at some level the way that I responded, I'd say in the first 30 to 60 days of COVID, where I had PTSD, I think a little bit over the 2008 crisis. And I thought that this was it again in a different package. And my leadership went back to hunker down, cut, really shore up, which in some ways there's some logic in that. But I think I pushed that a little bit too far in the way that I handled it because my teammates, most of them, or a few of them, were newer to the team. Scott's been with me for a lot of years. Tammy, I have a handful that have been with me for years. But a couple of my newer players saw that war face mark come out, and it was a little bit of a turnoff. Yeah. And I ended up losing one employee that maybe needed to go anyway, but it was because the wartime Mark CEO came out at that moment.
Yeah, it happens. I think the real answer though is how quickly you recovered. You did recover in 60 days, as you said.
Yeah, I think I did. I think.
How did you do it? Did you talk to other people? Like, let's talk about your process in that. So when things are going sideways, what do you do as a seasoned leader here in Sacramento? How do you get your head back on straight?
Well, we're a newer team. I have my internal team with my internal investments and things like that with Scott and Tammy. And so I would come to the office. Like we have this co-working space. So there's nobody here except the three of us. Right. I mean, everybody else is like, I'm working from home. I'm paranoid about COVID. And we have co-working spaces. So we have to put all the signs up that says, don't come in the office or come in at your own risk or whatever it was. And so it was kind of the three of us. So I would come in gym shorts or whatever and sort of vent. Yeah. And thank God they are the type of people that are like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to figure it out together. And so we ended up making some difficult decisions around cutting expenses and some things like that. So I had them, luckily. Thank God. So thinking back is a lot of gratitude. But I also had my wife, Stacy. So I would say as much as anything in COVID brought my wife and I together in kind of a unique way. I had a little bit more time on my hands, so we spent time together going to the grocery store, making sure we had toilet paper, and stuff. Like we spent time together talking about what we wanted to do, and I think so. Crisis can bring people together too, and so for me, it solidified some of the great relationships in my life, and then the light bulb went off and we decided to start the Growth Factory, which was extremely therapeutic because now we had something to attack, right? Yep, so defense. Oh no, what's going to happen? Cut. That's not the right way to lead. There may be a time where you need to do some cutting and and things like that, but really, you got to attack from a different direction. I know that full retreat mode can't last forever. You need to step back and attack from a different direction. And I think that's why I'm so excited about the Growth Factory. It was our, instead of doing events and instead of all the face-to-face stuff and relying on co-working space as our business model, let's step back and see what we can do for Sacramento. And that's what the Growth Factory is about. It's around building out the Sacramento ecosystem with a startup accelerator and some more venture capital to sprinkle onto these early stage companies. So that was the decision to find a way to attack. I knew I wanted to, but it took my teammates, Rick and Monique, to really bring that out. So eternal gratitude to the people that sort of stood by me during my time of being a little bit erratic.
Well, event plus response equals an outcome. And, the power of choice that sits inside of each of us, agency, authorship that sits inside of all of us means that no matter where you are, you can always make another decision.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be clear on the vision behind the decision.
So on that too, that's interesting that you say that, because what if you can't, what happens when one of us can't get to the vision, right? You can't, you need to change in some way, but you're procrastinating on deciding how to reframe the attack plan.
Have you ever noticed there's not just one right decision? And sometimes the best decision is just to make one?
Yes.
I honestly believe that. And we were talking earlier before the show that sometimes you have to ship things before they're ready because they're never perfectly ready. So, my best advice is if you're in paralysis, find someone to talk the ideas through, look at the offense and the defense, and make sure you know what the context is you need for the phase that your business is in. There are times to play defense, and there are times to play offense. More often than defense, almost always. But just know what season your business is in, know what the vision is, what the next season looks like. And then and most importantly, is get collaborative with somebody else. Don't live in isolation and make a decision. You'll always have a chance to make another one.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. So one of my mantras, and I haven't said this on the show, but maybe once, but it's sort of a philosophy in terms of like how to play the game, how to win. And it's either Warchest or Wildfire. So if you're a business leader out there that is in analysis mode, we'll call it, you want to make sure that you're preserving your resources, your war chest, right? So build the war chest, maybe harvest. So at the beginning of COVID, we went into a little bit of harvest mode. Let's make sure we cut our burn rate or make some profit or whatever. But let's shore up. Let's build the war chest a little bit. And then get to Wildfire as fast. So then you start the growth factory. And now it's like, okay, we know we got something here. Now it's Wildfire. Let's grow that like a wildfire. And really, you want to be in one place or the other. Because if you're not in war chest mode, which is okay, then you should be growing.
No person's land, no man's land. I mean, nothing happens there except stalemate, and vision doesn't lay there. So I completely agree. And I think the most important piece is like you for EO, but is to have a group of people who are diverse, not always in your industry, because there's so much learning we can have from what other people are seeing to understand the ecosystem we're all trying to sell. Because many of us are selling into a similar, into human beings, right? B2B or B2C. What are you learning about how buying trends are happening, selling trends are happening, preferences are being made, decisions are being made? Like, get yourself, if you're a young entrepreneur, if you're a young founder, in a collaborative think tank, because there's so much learning in that shared space.
Yes. And when you show up, and you brought this up at the beginning about showing up, when you show up at the Entrepreneurs Organization event, or it could be a Winning Streak type event or a Growth Factory type event. When you show up with that. I mean, because you never know who's watching. You never know which VC might be looking at your demeanor. Whether you're nice to the waitress or when you show up in a group atmosphere like that, show up at your best. And I think a lot of times people don't show up. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, like it's an important event, like it's the World Series. Show up like you expect this to advance the ball in your career.
Mic drop. No more to say. Mic drop. I mean, showing up matters. It is the essence of everything. Yeah. It is the essence.
So in terms of this communication, let's get back to your book a little bit. So what other key principles within the book do you feel like are really resonating with people?
So I think the key piece that's really resonating with people is the concept of two-way versus one-way conversations. You already said it. And so I just want to anchor back. Remember when we were talking a few minutes ago about people competing for airspace in a conversation?
Yes.
and it often feels like a push or a pull. Those conversations build a really bad brand. And no learning happens. No collective new thinking happens. No innovation. Nothing happens in those. It's just like a conversation of like, see me, I matter. Then you're like, see me, I matter. It's
okay.
It's nothing wrong with it. It's just there's not a lot of value. So if there's one thing we want to bring people to is to understand that great conversations are one way. I allow you to really process, think through things, ask great questions that draw out something for you.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me back up on that a second. You said great conversations are one way?
Yes, not two way.
Okay, great conversations are one way, which means one of us is really listening well.
Bingo.
Okay.
So I'm really allowing, like, if we're going to, we're having one right now. We're having a great conversation. You ask a question, I kind of like fill it out. I ask you a question, you fill it out. But we're not competing to contribute. Great conversations in business especially are a one way. It means I say, hey, Mark, tell me a little bit about what's happening with your sales pipeline. Tell me about your marketing plan right now. Share with me what you're thinking strategically on your investments. Really generic questions I just asked.
Mm-hmm.
What that then allows the brain in front of me, your brain, to do is start processing out loud. The one thing I want people to hear is don't jump in too quickly to contribute until you've actually heard through the other person. Number one, I can find out what their thinking process is like. Number two, I can find out what their confidence and knowledge is like. Number three, people often have the answer inside of themselves, and they'll do it way more often if you figure it out as opposed to me shooting all over you. Mm-hmm. No reason to should my answers all over you.
Right. I mean, so many times it feels like people that don't listen as well, myself, we assume things.
Yeah.
Right. And so we assume the answer. And so we don't really want to give you a chance to get it out in your way, because maybe the answer really has a texture that I hadn't really realized yet.
I'm going to borrow that word, a texture. You're right. Because there's something I really think is important for all of us. In it, that there are times where two things can be true at the same time. So like, my son is annoying, but I love him.
Okay.
My son is annoying and I love him. Two things can be true at one time, but way too often we're in these like conversations, we're looking for the but.
Okay.
That makes sense? Like this business is hard and I love it. It's very different than this business is hard, but I love it.
Okay,
and so we really talk
dive
about
deeper on that for me a little bit, because I'm trying to get the nuance of that.
So, Mark, language matters. The words we put out into the world build worlds. There's an old Jewish proverb that says words build worlds, and they do. Think about the words that have come at you in life and how they have stung, how they've motivated, how they've discredited, or how they've influenced you.
Yeah.
Words are power.
They are.
So one of the ones we want to really encourage the world to realize is that we have been in a but place. But is a fractionalizing a divisive word.
Okay.
And but isn't always true. Two things can be happy. Two things can be true at the same time. I can be happy and frustrated. I can be motivated and scared.
And by saying the word "and," it comes
matters.
across different to your audience.
Yeah. I want you to try it tonight with Stacy. I want you to try it with your employees. When they hear the word "and," it's like it's like your sign up there. Yes, if. Yes, if is the "and," but is the but what? Like, words matter. Words matter.
I agree with that. I hadn't put the word "but" as such a divisive sort of word as compared to "and," but I get it. One of the things that
you'll hear it all the time now, Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to be listening for it now too. One of the things that I find some people are really good at, I think you're really good at finding a way to go deeper into a conversation without. You can go deeper into a conversation. You can get somebody to spill their guts easier than others, right? It's gift. You have a gift for asking questions that get people to sort of spill their guts, and it seems to me that when people spill their guts, that's when the bond happens. That's the magic. That's how we become close, is when you got vulnerable and you shared something you wouldn't normally share. And it's like, we bonded over you admitting that, you're not a good leader, or you weren't as good a leader at that moment. We bond over these spilling of guts moments. How do you do that?
So thank you for calling it a gift. It's not, it's a skill.
Okay.
It's taught in the book. And it's one of the most important things you can learn, is that most people, when they're in conversations, think that they're translators. So what they do is they start a conversation and they say things like, oh, so what I heard you mean is, and they make it all about their translation of what they heard.
Let me paraphrase.
Oh, what I hear you saying is, now look, these are all okay tactics, but they don't get somebody to go deep. What you actually really need to listen to is not the word, but the energy behind the word.
Okay.
And conversations oftentimes sound like this: la, 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 la. And what you're listening for is, where is the energy? And ask about that.
Yeah. So where that might be, would that be when they use a word that is so...
Or a phrase, or a story.
Okay. So sometimes it has to do with emotion. When I hear
emotion
the emotion piece coming out, that's when I'm like, oh, there's either the pain point or the part that they're most excited about talking about. That's the relevant piece of our the way we might relate to one another, is where that emotional piece is. Sometimes I don't listen for that like I'd like to, but I know that's when I can get into those conversations that are around people's deep emotion. They're more... First of all, I like those conversations better. I mean, let alone they want to obviously express,
right.
Tend to want to express themselves in those scenarios. But to me, it's a more interesting story if I can talk about something that really, really matters to them.
Well, trust is grown in vulnerability. Now, not that you have to vomit all of your stuff all over the place or unpack everything out of your backpack, but trust is grown when you get to experience me in my true form as opposed to my performance form. Mm-hmm. And we're having a real authentic conversation here right now. We're riffing, not sure where it'll go, but we have trust. We have trust together that I'm safe, you're safe. We have each other's backs, but we'll still push each other to think differently. And I think that's the essence of a great conversation, and what we teach people in the book to do. And what I'm passionate about is, let me have a time where I just listen to you, experience you, follow the energy words, the emotions, and I'll reveal something. So whether I'm asking you, tell me what you're passionate about right now with the Growth Factory, or whether I say, tell me about your childhood, whatever the question is, it's going to get down in the end, if I listen well enough, to the values that drive you, what you're committed to, and who matters in your life. It always does.
Yeah.
That's why we work in the world.
Incredible. Yeah. You make it sound so simple, but there's a reason why some people, you say it's a skill, and I believe that, but some people have just become very skillful at it, while others are less developed.
It's no different than CrossFit. You go there every day and you do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that as communicators, do you do the work? Like, we have to do the work. I have to clean up conversations and do things all the time, still myself.
What about creating, so as a CEO, we have a lot of things on our plate. There's so many things to do. You've got employees, maybe you have shareholders, all the different stakeholders, customers. So there's a lot of people that you need to have conversations with, you need to have relationships with, you need to communicate with. How do you keep up with everybody, right? So are there rhythms and habits that sort of force that you recommend for, I guess, CEOs of a certain size company?
Not in the book.
Okay.
But here's something I think is really important. Have you noticed that you said rhythms, that you have a rhythm of your day when you're most creative, when you're most productive?
I think so, yeah. I think there's definitely some of that.
So for me, I know that at the end of the day, I'm tired. I'm up at 5. My best time is between 11 and 12. After 12, I've exercised. I'm feeling great. I can get tired. People all have a natural rhythm. So number one, if you're a great leader, a CEO, find your rhythm and start blocking off time and tasks based on your rhythm and your energy. Number one important thing. So if you were to open my calendar right now on my computer, you would see everything in colors. So I know when I'm exercising based on a color, when I'm making revenue, when I'm doing strategic.
Is that green? Is your revenue's green?
Yeah.
I was guessing. What color is exercise?
Exercise is yellow.
Okay.
The exercise yellow. The book is blue, purple. And this is black. Right now, I'm in an equity conversation with you. I'm not making money, but I'm pouring into others. So I'm like, look at my calendar, and I can tell you how contributive I was to what part of my life.
Interesting.
So I really encourage people to, because facts often harsh, always revealing.
Yeah.
Always revealing.
So if you're having revenue challenges, maybe you need to have a little more green on your calendar.
Yeah. Or even more black to say, who are you investing in? Because black is strategic equity. It eventually becomes revenue if harvested well, if watered. Well, first of all, watered, if, the right soil. Like, let's really be tracking how our time comes down. And at the highest context for me is personal. I better be in the best physical, spiritual, emotional, intellectual shape I can be if I'm going to be expecting others to be.
Yeah, without a doubt. So thinking about that, let's talk about winning streak a little bit, because I think it's important to highlight what you're doing. I really respect you and the team at Winning Streak, and you're investing into startups, similar to the way that the Growth Factory is. Why is that important to you?
Great question.
Oh, like you said, don't ask why at the beginning. Huh?
No, that's okay.
Why isn't the coffee done?
That's different. Why is that important to you? I don't think you may know this. I've been scrappy and different in my family my whole life. Started a piano school, started a tennis school. There wasn't a time from like 9 or 10 on that my mind wasn't thinking of business. And I grew up with 2 school teachers. It wasn't part of their world. And I always would watch my aunt pouring into Sacramento, into the community with Fleet Feet, and then Yuba shoes, and just everything she was passionate about. And for me, I have one core value that's really important, and it's to create community with people. Help our community create great communities where people can thrive. So for me, that's why I do Winning Streak. I believe that there are so many great young minds, brains, entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders out there who just need somebody to walk alongside them, build a community. And there's not a better place than Sacramento. I'm not leaving. I mean, I know a lot of people are gun shy in California. I'm here. I love this state. I love our community. I love Placer County. And Sacramento and El Dorado too. But I'm born and bred here. I'm all in. So I'm with Winning Streak because people matter, business matters, community matters. We'll make it happen with you.
And I respect that tremendously. Not only the why you are doing it, but the how. There are so many people. We hear them. You all hear them. We all hear people talk about what's wrong, and but they don't do anything about it, right? So it's like, maybe they move. Okay, so for me, it's like, if it's that bad, go ahead and move to Nevada or do what you got to do. It's fine with me. But if you're staying,
let's fight
make
together.
an impact. Yeah, do something productive if you're staying, right? Because if you're not part of the solution, right? Maybe you're part of the problem, and just sitting around kibitzing, armchair quarterbacking about what's wrong with us. It's only helpful if you're having a productive conversation where one of you's looking to figure out a way to do something about it. If all you're doing is talking crap, it's not that helpful.
I'm the whining.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business or anywhere else, like you and I are both solution oriented. Now, that doesn't mean we won't listen to the pain or the whining, but the whining can only last for so long before I'm like, okay, and now are you done feeling sorry for yourself? And look, we all have just shit that happens, but the reality is that in the end, it's just no way to live.
Yeah. Well, one of the
Painful.
things, whining wastes time. So there's no question that we all got to whine a little bit. My team has heard me when the pandemic hit. I whined a little bit, and then we regrouped. But it is a waste of time for most people. And if you spend too long doing it, it's just an embarrassment, in my opinion. But one of the things that I know through being an old guy is that entrepreneurs are the answer.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurs can solve the world's biggest problems. We can solve problems around crime. We can solve problems around disease. We can solve problems around the environment. And we can solve problems around the way our city is, right? Yeah, and no matter which of the problems, if you bring the entrepreneurs into it, if you can let the free market get after it, chances are we're going to leave it a little bit better than how we found it, because we bring an innovative mindset. It's the nature of capitalism. And so to be able to invest into entrepreneurship like you and I are each doing together and individually, I mean, I feel like we're helping with the solution by helping the entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And what a better place to do it than here in our own backyard, and most importantly, with great people. I mean, these people become not family, but like, I think about them all the time. I'm all in.
Yeah.
I mean, I want their success. And I'm fine to ride pine. All the behind the scenes thing. They can have their glory. I just love the idea of being on the ride with them, being a part of it behind the scenes, because it's their business. Yeah. You and I are there to help them thrive, and we love it.
Agreed. All right, let's do some closing thoughts about leadership and the things that are so important around communicating, because that really is what a leader is all about. So maybe just some closing thoughts to the up and comer. I'm
going to reiterate it again. Be an author for how you show up. How you show up matters in every single thing. You really did a good job of saying, no, people are always watching. How you show up matters, number one. That begets take care of yourself. If you're a leader, oxygen mask first. Put that on, not in a selfish way, but in a way to empower you to have the optimal brain performance and energy you need. So don't forget that. Number 3, if you're an entrepreneur and a leader right now, don't forget your family. A lot of times you'll drive so hard you'll forget your family. You're doing it for your family. Make sure you take time to do the right things, the kind things for your family. And finally, number 4 is the heavy lift of communication is on you. Listen well. Ask questions. Don't be leading or fraudulent in your curiosity. And most of all, let's remember this. People are doing the best they can with the skills they can access in the minute they're in.
Welcome back to the Mark Haney Show and Bridge the Gap by Jennifer Edwards. Great book, great read. Hope that you have a chance to pick it up. Also hope that you get a chance, if you are a startup, if you are an investor, if you are somebody that wants to help in the entrepreneurial community, I hope you get a chance to check out the Growth Factory. That is our startup accelerator and accompanying venture fund with the Backyard Advantage. And the Backyard Advantage is the people of Sacramento. So check it out. We're at growthfactory.us. You can see the companies that we've invested into. You can see how to get involved if you are a startup, and look forward to knowing you better if you're building something in this region or you want to help build something in this region that is spectacular in the way of a startup. So to all you out there, fight the good fight for entrepreneurship, for our freedom, and our way of life. Here at the Growth Factory, here at Haney Biz, we are never above you. We're never below you. We're always by your side. Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.